Okay. Well, I decided to do a little mini cast or whatever to voice maybe some facts, but also my opinion on the circus that was the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. So everybody knows that, like, this man, he was not a boy. He's 18 years old, so he is a man. Was on trial for killing two people and injuring a third. And he basically illegally had it was an assault rifle of some sort, an AR or something of some sort, purchased for him, and traveled from his home in Illinois to Wisconsin to protect businesses during a Black Lives Matter protest. He knowingly went where he knew there was going to be a protest with an illegally purchased assault rifle, which only says one thing to me: you're going there with the intention of shooting someone, like scaring someone and or shooting someone, at which he did. And the claim from him is that it was in self-defense, where yes, the one person he shot in the bicep did have a gun, but that's not who he killed. The person who he killed were the two people who were protecting the person with the gun, and one of them had a skateboard, and poor little Kyle was afraid of the skateboard, that he might get decapitated, because a skateboard is an assault weapon, just like his assault rifle. So, with that being said, a little pretense to that. Kyle goes to trial. Now, giving a little facts for how trials work in the US. Everybody knows, according to the Constitution, everybody's allowed a free trial or fair trial in the US, a trial by a jury of your peers in criminal cases. In civil cases, you don't really have to have a jury, but you are allowed a jury if you want to. It's in your constitutional right. So typically what happens is there is obviously the arrest. There is an arraignment. In some larger trials, there's a grand jury trial, which is not the actual trial itself. A grand jury trial just means that all the evidence is brought forth and they decide whether or not there's enough sufficient evidence to take it to a trial. Once that happens, the judge will set a trial date. And then once you go to trial, you obviously have your opening statements. They, go through all of the evidence that they have, call forth witnesses, yada, 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 cross-examine, and then they'll have their closing statements. While picking a jury, there is a pool. If you are registered to vote, then you could potentially be brought forth for jury duty. You'll get a little summons. And what they do is they send it out to the people in that district that are registered to vote. And you will go in, and typically either the prosecution or the defense will ask you questions, or they both can ask questions, and then they will vote to decide whether or not they want to put you on the jury. Well, in this case, and apparently this judge has allowed it in other cases, I don't know how fair this is, but they put all the jurors that have been cross-examined, that were like the most likely to be on the trial or not excused, into a raffle, and Kyle was allowed to pick out his jurors from this raffle. It's I guess like a lotto. He did pick, that way it's not, there wasn't any kind of jury bias, but I still don't get how this makes it any more fair. Not that I really think anything should have been fair for him, but everyone's entitled to a fair trial. So he picked out the jurors that would, hear his testimony, and the particular judge in this case, I think his name is Schrodinger. It's Schroeder, something like that. reminds me of the judge in the case where I don't know if he was an athlete, assaulted a girl behind like a dumpster, and the man's parents, I guess his dad might have been a lawyer or something like that, but the judge, and maybe the jury in the trial said that they didn't want to ruin his life by, accusing him or having him be guilty of this crime. And this judge reminds me a little bit of that. It very much reads, oh, this poor little white boy was scared for his life. It was self-defense. He could have been attacked by a skateboard. Anyways, back to medical crack. So they go through some opening arguments. They also go through, witnesses. Kyle cries on the stand, his crocodile tears. And the judge dismisses a few things, like a few of what the prosecution thought were going to be like slam dunks. The judge dismisses them. And at the very end, as we all know, he was acquitted and found not guilty on all charges. Here is my thoughts on this. This is my opinion. I feel like this is a very correct opinion. He is white, and that's why he was acquitted. That's why he was found not guilty, because he was white and a white male. Yeah. Our judicial system at its finest, y'all. Two things. A, if he would have been Black, first of all, I don't think he would have been able to get within 100 feet of a protest. He would have been shot by the cops or someone else. Two, if he would have been Black and it would have gone to trial, this would have been very different. And I'm sure he would have spent many, many years in jail. Number three, there are women sitting in prison, potentially for life, for killing their abusers. And it wasn't found as self-defense. So how does this man, he wasn't even a boy, he's a man. If you're going to call someone like Tamir Rice a man and that you were scared and that's why he died, this boy was a man too. How does this man walk around with an assault rifle knowingly, after having conversations saying, yeah, I'd shoot him, like talking about people breaking into businesses, knowingly goes where there is a protest with this assault rifle, murders two people and injures another, because that's exactly what he did. He murdered those two people and injures another. And he gets, not only does he get acquitted, but he also gets, and no surprise from the super right wing, is he called a vigilante, but he's also offered internships. And of course, it's a senator from Florida. Like, come on, Florida. Come on, y'all. And then to top it off, the audacity of it all, he goes on to say that he supports the Black Lives Matter movement. He thinks they should have a right to peacefully protest. Are you kidding me? Is he kidding us? You support them and think that they have the right to peacefully protest, but your ass took a gun to protect businesses while they were protesting? This is what the 4 years of having the Cheeto Mussolini, yeah, that's Donald Trump, in office did. It allowed white people who already had a superiority complex come all up out of the woodwork and live right out in the open. Like, it's okay. This is exactly what it did. It set the precedent for any and every trial. This trial right here set the precedent for any and every trial that's going to happen from now on out when a white man kills two people at self-defense. Not that this wasn't already happening. George Zimmerman. Every cop who has ever killed a black man because it was self-defense or they were under duress. This has literally set the precedent. And yeah, it was happening before those 4 years. But in no way, shape, or form was it as blatant as it is now. And was there so many people calling people like Kyle Rittenhouse a hero or a vigilante? He is not a hero. He is not a vigilante. He has a serious white supremacist complex. And yeah, he may be found not guilty, but hopefully it eats away at him every night that he knows what he did. Hopefully it starts to eat away and tear away at him to know what he did, to know that he murdered two people. And you know what? Yeah, there may be double jeopardy. He can't go back to trial for this. But I sure as hell hope the families of the 3 victims sue the hell out of him and his mama. Take them to civil court and sue the hell out of them. Make their lives miserable. And yeah, I know people will say, well, there should be forgiveness. No, not in this case. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. And now there are basically no consequences. He gets to go on TV and tell his side of the story and act like he's some saint and that, oh, it really was just self-defense. Sue the hell out of his family. Take them to court. Take them to court. Ask for a different, obviously there are different judges for criminal and civil courts, but take him to court in a different district if it's able to be done. There needs to be a Kickstarter for these victims' families to get the best lawyers that there can be to make that family miserable, to make them have to pay for the rest of their lives. Because he is no hero. He is no vigilante. And I hope that this starts a chain reaction for all the women who are sitting in prison and even the men who are sitting in prison who killed their assault, like people who attacked them, who really committed self-defense. I hope this sets a precedent and new court cases keep coming in and keep rolling in and rolling in and rolling in. Because these women that are sitting in jail who killed someone, who was physically beating on them, who physically assaulted them to the point where they could have lost their lives, do not deserve to sit in prison because it truly was self-defense. Kyle Rittenhouse should be in prison for the rest of his life for what he did. And I have no qualms in saying that. 100% I believe he should sit in prison for the rest of his life for what he did. But instead, he's going to get to go be an intern for a senator in Florida. Instead, he's going to get all this press time, which is why, again, I think the families of these victims need to take him to court and sue the hell out of him. It just shows what a circus our judicial system is right now. What a circus it is. Something very much needs to happen for white men, white cisgendered men, to be held accountable for the crimes that they commit. Because as of right now, it's a slap on the wrist. While Black men are dying for no good reason. Like, Black men are dying for selling cigarettes on the street. Black men are dying for maybe, so maybe he did give a counterfeit bill. Maybe he didn't have the money to buy something for his family. That is not worth someone dying. But white men can walk fully armed anywhere into the Capitol and live to see another day and may or may not go to jail for it. There is severe social injustice in this country. And unfortunately, people of color aren't getting their voices heard. And so it's up to us who are white, who have a voice, who can speak up for them and allow them to be heard in some way, shape, or form. It's up to us to get that heard. It's up to us to help start the change. We don't need to be their voice. They need to tell their own story. But we need to be the catalyst so that their voice can get heard. And that's what this cast is about, is me trying to shed some light on what little people who are going to hear this, but me trying to shed some light on what a joke that trial was. What a joke. I do not understand how things were presented in the way that the jury found him not guilty. And the things that the judge threw out, why the judge threw it out. I mean, obviously, it goes without saying that it should have been, I shouldn't be surprised that the verdict was read in the way that it was read. However, there needs to be accountability. And right now, he has no accountability for what he did. He's getting all this praise. He's getting all these opportunities. And there are two men who will never see the light of day, whose families will never see them again. All because he wanted to protect businesses, but somehow supports the Black Lives Matter movement. That's a crock. I see nothing wrong with having a gun. If you want to have a gun, have a gun. What I do see wrong is how easily it is to purchase a gun and why anyone would need an assault rifle besides the military. And to the people who say, well, we need the assault rifle to protect ourselves against the government, that is legitimately the definition of insurrection and treason. If you're protecting yourself against the government. Yes, the Constitution says you have the right to bear arms. It doesn't say you can get away with murder, but apparently, according to some of these judges, it does, especially if you're white and male. I seriously had debated for several days on whether or not I was actually going to say anything about it, but I feel like sometimes I sit a little too quietly, knowing that I have knowledge in certain aspects, because one of my degrees is political science with legal studies. So no, I didn't go to law school, but I do have, a fairly good knowledge of how court systems work. But this was something that I had, look, I am so angry. I'm not shocked, but I'm very angry. And like, we can't sit back and let this happen anymore. Like, this is to all the white people that listen to this. Like, we cannot sit back and let this happen anymore. When, again, if Kyle Rittenhouse would have been Black, he probably would have died. He would have been shot, or he would be spending the rest of his life in jail, potentially on death row. Because I'm sure they would have somehow found it to have been first degree, because he would have gone with intent to do what he did, which I feel like he did. He had intent when he had someone purchase that gun for him, get in his car, and he and whoever it was that was with him drove how many ever miles it was to get to Wisconsin. That was their MO. It wasn't self-defense. You already had a plan. It just so happened that those were the 3 people that got in your way. So, again, for all the white peeps out there listening to this, myself included, we got to do better. And yeah, the 2 of the people that died, were white. That's what we got to do. Because the judicial system in this country is now just laughable at this point, and needs to be completely turned around. And that's not going to happen until, it continually gets brought up, especially by white people. We have to continually push to make changes, because unfortunately, our Black and brown brothers and sisters can't. They have a strong voice, but because of the overwhelming white supremacy and white privilege in this country, their voices get drowned out. And it's not something that needs to happen. They need to be heard. They need to be heard, because people like Kyle need to be held accountable, and they won't until this judicial system truly becomes fair. Until the basis of what he did and how this trial was handled is handled the same way for men and women of color, then you can't call this a fair judicial system. You can't call those trials fair. Because even though it's tried by a jury, the judges in that court set the tone and set the precedents. And if they are already on the side of whether it be the defendant or the victim, that will sway the jury. So that's my little piece on this, and that's me venting to get all of this out, because I've sat too long to be mad, and since I'm making a go at this whole YouTube/podcast biz, I figured I'd make a little video on it and tell you my thoughts about how farcical this actually was and how it made my blood boil. So, all right, guys. See you on the flip side.